The crosshairs trembled against the white void of the blizzard. 420 meters. Moving target. Visibility near zero. Wind screaming from the northwest at 15 knots. Though for the single heartbeat, the gusts seemed to pause, as if the storm itself was holding its breath. Corporal Lauren Mackenzie's finger rested against the cold trigger of her M24, the metal biting through her tactical glove. Her last match-grade round sat chambered, 175 grains of hand-loaded precision that represented everything she had left. Beyond her scope, barely visible through the swirling snow, a figure moved with the unmistakable authority of command. The enemy commander. His arm was raised, mouth open, about to give the order that would send 30-plus soldiers flooding into the exposed flank of the main trench line. If that order was given, everyone behind her would die. Lauren had 4 seconds, maybe 5. She adjusted her hold. 2 feet left, 3 feet high, accounting for a bullet drop at this distance, accounting for the drift that would push her round sideways through the frozen air, accounting for everything she had learned in 16 months of combat across 2 tours that nobody had wanted to hear. Her breath fogged against the scope. This was impossible. Every variable was wrong. The distance, the weather, the movement, the stakes. But someone had to take the shot, and she was the only one watching. If that opening hooked you, trust me, this story only gets more intense. Subscribe now for more real stories of courage and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. 41 hours earlier, Corporal Lauren Mackenzie had arrived at Observation Post 7 with her M24 slung across her back and a rucksack full of equipment that nobody had bothered to inspect. The transport had dropped her at the main perimeter, and she had walked the remaining 600 meters through knee-deep snow to the eastern flank alone. OP-7 was exactly what she had expected. A reinforced timber structure, barely 8 feet by 6 feet, elevated 3 feet above the frozen ground on a crude platform. Sandbags lined the exterior walls in a single layer, enough to stop small arms fire, not enough to survive anything heavier. A narrow firing slit cut through the eastern face, offering a 180-degree arc of observation across the sloped approach that descended 800 meters into pine-covered hills. On the tactical maps back at command, OP-7 appeared as a small circle, one of 7 observation posts ringing the defensive perimeter. But while OPs 1 through 5 anchored the western line, the expected threat axis, and OP-6 covered the northern approach with a 2-person crew and direct radio link to the mortar section, OP-7 was different. OP-7 was the post nobody talked about. 1-person rotation, 8-hour shifts, no fire support priority, no reinforcement protocol. The eastern flank was considered secure because the terrain made large-scale movement impractical, and intelligence assessments had concluded that any serious enemy action would come from the west. Lauren had read those assessments. She had also noticed that they were 18 days old, based on summer reconnaissance, and did not account for the frozen stream bed that cut to the valley floor, a natural avenue approach that would be invisible under snow cover. But nobody had asked her opinion. They never did. She pushed open the small door of OP-7 and stepped inside. The interior was cramped, dark, and cold. A wooden bench ran along the back wall. A field phone hung from a nail beside the firing slit. A stack of sandbags served as a shooting platform, and a previous occupant had left a crumpled ration packet in the corner. Lauren set down her rucksack and studied the space. This was her position now, her responsibility, her war, reduced to a 180-degree slit in a timber wall. She could hear the bitterness rising in her throat, familiar and unwelcome. She pushed it down. The first thing she did was clean the firing slit of frost buildup. The second thing she did was arrange her equipment in the precise order she would need it. M24 on the platform, bipod deployed, scope covers removed, spare magazine for her M9 sidearm to her left, field phone within arm's reach, topographic map spread across her knees. The third thing she did was begin memorizing terrain. 800 meters of sloped approach, descending into tree line. A boulder cluster at 600 meters, large enough to conceal a 4-man fire team. A lightning-struck tree at 900 meters, its blackened trunk a natural reference point. An abandoned stone foundation at 1,100 meters, barely visible as a rectangular shadow against the snow. And below everything, invisible but present, the frozen stream depression that cut through the valley like a hidden highway. Lauren pulled a pencil from her breast pocket and began drawing her range card. The range card was an art form that most soldiers never mastered. Lauren had learned it from Staff Sergeant Elias Brennan during her first deployment, a lifetime ago in a different theater. Brennan was a sniper instructor who had survived 3 wars and had a philosophy about precision that went beyond marksmanship. The shot is the last thing you do, he used to say. Everything before it, everything, is what makes it possible. Lauren had taken that lesson and built her career on it. 2 tours, expert qualification on the M24 with a score of 297 out of 300. 16 months of combat time across 2 deployments. A tactical eye that had identified 3 ambush positions, 2 IED placements, and 1 enemy observation post that battalion intelligence had missed entirely. And yet here she was, assigned to a guard post that the duty roster listed as miscellaneous eastern coverage, given an 8-hour rotation that no one expected her to extend, placed on a flank that command had already decided was irrelevant. She knew why. It wasn't because she had failed. It wasn't because she lacked qualifications. It wasn't because anyone doubted her shooting. It was because every time she opened her mouth in a briefing room, she was met with a particular silence that told her she had already been categorized. Female sniper. Checkbox. Quota. Someone to place in a position where she could do no harm and claim no credit. Her tactical reports disappeared into filing cabinets. Her range scores were recorded but never mentioned. Her observations were noted and then ignored in favor of assessments from soldiers with half her experience and twice her visibility. The system did not see Lauren Mackenzie. It saw a problem to be managed, a name to be assigned somewhere out of the way. OP7 was the natural conclusion. Lauren finished her range card and pinned it to the timber wall beside the firing slit. She had marked 7 reference points, calculated range estimates to each, and noted the wind pattern she had observed during her walk from the main perimeter. The northwest gusts were consistent, running between 10 and 18 knots, with periodic lulls that lasted 4 to 7 seconds. Those lulls would matter. If she ever had to shoot beyond 300 meters, those lulls would be the difference between a hit and a miss. She checked her ammunition next. Standard ball rounds, 42, sufficient for defensive fire. Accurate to 300 meters under ideal conditions, less reliable in extreme weather. Match-grade hand-loaded cartridges. 3. Precision rounds she had assembled herself, using cases she had trimmed and weighted, primers she had selected for consistency, and projectiles she had measured with calipers. Each round represented hours of work, and she had been saving them for a moment that justified their use. She placed the 3 match-grade rounds in her left breast pocket, close to her body heat. Cold affected powder burn rates. She had learned that the hard way during a winter qualification exercise when her first 3 shots had dropped low because the propellant was burning slower than her ballistic calculations assumed. Details. Everything was details. By 0500, Lauren had completed her initial setup and begun her first terrain observation sweep. The blizzard had not yet descended in full force. Visibility was 50 meters, sometimes 60, and the snow fell in steady curtains rather than horizontal sheets. She could see the boulder cluster at 600 meters as a dark smudge against the white. The lightning tree was invisible, but she knew where it was. She spent 40 minutes watching the tree line. Nothing moved, no sound except the wind. The forest was silent in the way that forests become silent when large predators pass through, or when men who know how to move unseen are positioning themselves for something that has not yet begun. Lauren noted the silence. She did not dismiss it. At 0630, she picked up the field phone and rang the command post. CP, this is OP7, requesting status check on Eastern Flank Assessment. The voice that answered was young, bored, and distracted. OP7, this is CP. Eastern Flank is green. No activity. Maintain observation. CP, I'm noting unusual silence in the tree line at 900 meters. Possible wildlife displacement. Requesting confirmation that morning patrols have swept the eastern approach. A pause. Then, OP7, no patrols are scheduled for eastern approach. Asset allocation is focused on western perimeter. Maintain observation and report any visual contact. CP out. The line went dead. Lauren set the phone down and returned to her scope. She understood what had just happened. Her report had been logged, categorized as low priority, and filed alongside the other noise that command filtered out during high-tempo operations. The western perimeter was where the action would be. The eastern flank was secure. OP7 was a formality. Nobody was going to check the tree line. Nobody was going to ask her what she had heard, or rather, what she had not heard. By 07:15, Lauren had observed 3 additional anomalies that she could not explain. The first was a disturbance in the snow line at approximately 800 meters. Through her scope, she could see a section of the slope where the snow cover appeared uneven, disturbed in a pattern that did not match wind drift or animal movement. It looked like something had moved through that area recently and attempted to conceal its passage. The second anomaly was a faint metallic sound that had reached her ears at 0648. It lasted less than a second, a click, like a weapon being charged or a piece of equipment shifting against another piece of equipment. The wind had carried it from somewhere in the northeast, beyond her visual range, and she had not heard it again. The third anomaly was a continued silence. By 07:15, she should have heard birds. Winter species that inhabited these forests, ravens, crows, the occasional hawk, were vocal at dawn. Their absence meant something had disturbed them. Something had entered their territory and forced them to relocate. Lauren rang command again. CP, this is OP7. Additional observations to report. The same young voice, slightly more irritated now. OP7, go ahead. I'm observing possible trail disturbance at 800 meters, bearing 045. Also noted a metallic sound signature at 0648, bearing approximately 030. Wildlife displacement continues, requesting that this information be passed to S2 for assessment. Another pause, longer this time. She heard muffled voices in the background, someone asking what OP7 wanted, someone else responding with what sounded like a dismissive laugh. OP7, this is CP. We'll pass it up. Maintain observation. CP out. The line went dead again. Lauren stared at the field phone. She knew what that conversation had been. She had heard variations of it throughout her career. The female sniper at the nothing post, calling in with observations that nobody had asked for, probably seeing shadows, probably nervous, probably looking for attention. She could imagine a duty officer making a note in the log, something brief, something that technically fulfilled his obligation to record her report without actually elevating it to anyone who might act on it. Lauren closed her eyes for 3 seconds. She allowed herself that much frustration. Then she opened them and returned to her scope. If command would not investigate the eastern approach, she would do it herself. From here, with the only tool she had. Over the next 90 minutes, Lauren conducted the most detailed terrain analysis of her career. She divided her observation arc into 12 sectors of 15 degrees each. She assigned each sector priority based on concealment potential, approach angles, and tactical utility. She noted every shadow that could hide a man, every depression that could shelter a crawling squad, every tree line that could mask movement. The frozen stream bed became her primary concern. It ran northeast to southwest through the valley floor, cutting between the boulder cluster and the lightning tree. Under summer conditions, it would be visible as a rocky channel with shallow water. Under winter conditions, with 3 feet of snow cover, it was invisible, but the depression remained. If an enemy force wanted to approach the eastern flank undetected, that stream bed was the route. It offered covered movement to within 400 meters of the perimeter. At that point, a disciplined unit could break into squad elements and advance through the scattered pine cover until they reached assault distance. Lauren calculated the timeline. If a platoon-sized element entered the stream bed at 1,100 meters and moved at standard patrol speed, they would reach the breakout point in approximately 18 minutes. From the breakout point to the main trench line, assuming they encountered no resistance, another 6 to 8 minutes. Total assault timeline, 24 to 26 minutes from initial detection to perimeter breach. That assumed someone detected them. Lauren looked at her field phone. She looked at her rifle. She looked at the white void beyond her firing slit, where somewhere in that storm, something was moving. She picked up the phone one more time. CP, this is OP-7, requesting priority elevation of Eastern Flank observations to command. The voice that answered was different now. Older, more authoritative. OP-7, this is CP Actual. Your observations have been logged. Western assault indicators are spiking. We're shifting all QRF assets to the western perimeter. Maintain your post. Do your job. CP out. The line went dead. The blizzard descended in full force at 0812. Visibility dropped from 50 meters to 20 meters in less than 4 minutes. The wind shifted from steady gusts to horizontal sheets of ice that peppered the timber walls of OP-7 like small caliber fire. Temperature, already well below zero, plunged another 15 degrees as the storm's course settled over the valley. Lauren pulled her parka tighter and returned to her scope. The terrain she had memorized was gone. The boulder cluster, invisible. The lightning tree, invisible. The stream bed, invisible. Everything beyond 100 meters had dissolved into a white void that swallowed sound and erased depth perception. She could hear the wind howling through the pine forest somewhere below. She could feel the timber platform trembling beneath her as the gusts hammered the structure. The field phone rattled against its nail. But Lauren did not move. She had been cold before. She had been scared before. She had operated under conditions that military manuals described as degraded and field soldiers described as impossible. This was different. This was the moment before something happened. She could feel it in her chest, a tightness that had nothing to do with the cold and everything to do with instinct. 16 months of combat had given her a sixth sense for danger, a biological alarm that triggered when patterns did not match, when something in the environment was wrong. Everything was wrong. The metallic sound she had heard at 0648 made sense now. Equipment being staged, weapons being prepared, men positioning themselves in the stream bed, waiting for the blizzard to cover their final approach. The wildlife silence made sense now. The animals had fled because predators had entered their territory. Not wolves, not bears, men. Lauren checked her rifle. The M24's bolt cycled smoothly despite the cold. She applied a thin layer of Arctic-grade lubricant during her setup, knowing that standard oils would freeze. Her scope remained clear, protected by the firing slit's narrow angle. Her ammunition was secure. 42 standard rounds in the canvas pouch beside her, 3 match-grade rounds against her chest. She had everything she needed except one thing. Belief. Not her belief. She believed what she had seen, what she had heard, what she felt. She believed that an enemy force was approaching through the blizzard, using the storm as concealment, timing their assault to coincide with whatever was about to happen on the western perimeter. What she lacked was command's belief. Her reports had been filed and forgotten. Her observations had been dismissed as nervousness. Her warnings had been swallowed by the institutional assumption that a female sniper at a minor post could not possibly understand tactical reality better than the intelligence officers and operations staff who had decided the eastern flank was secure. Lauren understood that she was alone. Whatever happened next, she would face it with a bolt-action rifle, 45 rounds, and the training that nobody had wanted to acknowledge. She settled into her shooting position and began to wait. The blizzard howled. The minutes crawled. The storm devoured the world outside her firing slit. At 0843, the field phone rang. Lauren grabbed it. OP-7. All stations, this is CP. Citrup follows. Western perimeter reporting movement in sectors 2 through 4. Possible enemy staging detected at 1,500 meters. QRF is spinning up. All units maintain heightened alert status. How copy over? The radio check began. OPs 1 through 5 acknowledged in sequence. OP-6 confirmed. Lauren waited for her turn. OP-7, how copy? OP-7 copies all. Western movement confirmed. No visual contact eastern flank, but conditions are 0-0. Maintaining alert. Roger. OP-7. CP out. The line went dead. Lauren set the phone down slowly. Western perimeter. Movement in sectors 2 through 4. Exactly where intelligence predicted the attack would come. exactly where every asset and attention had been focused, and the eastern flank remained quiet, invisible, forgotten. She returned to her scope and stared into the white nothing. Somewhere out there, beyond the curtain of snow, men were moving. She was certain of it now. The western movement was a feint, a diversionary force designed to draw defensive resources away from the real assault axis. At 0917, visibility briefly improved to 40 meters. Through that momentary window, Lauren saw it. Movement, 800 meters out, at the edge of the tree line, dark shapes emerging from the forest, spreading into the open slope. Not wildlife, not shadows. Men. She counted 6 figures before the blizzard closed in again and swallowed them. Lauren grabbed the field phone. Her voice was steady, but her heart was hammering. CP, this is OP7. Contact. 6 personnel observed at 800 meters, eastern approach. Enemy dismounts advancing toward the perimeter. Request immediate reinforcement to eastern flank. The response came through a wall of static. The western attack had begun. She could hear it now. The distant thump of mortars, the crackle of small arms fire. The radio net was flooded with traffic. OP7. Say again, you're broken and unreadable. CP, enemy contact, eastern flank. 6 dismounts at 800 meters, advancing on OP7. Request QRF to my position. More static, more distant voices. Then, OP7. All QRF assets are committed to the western perimeter. Western attack is underway. Maintain observation and report. CP, you don't understand, this is the real attack. The west is a diversion. I have visual on enemy forces advancing through the line crackled and died. The field phone went silent. Whether the connection had been severed by the storm or by someone at CP deciding that OP7's hysterical report was not worth the bandwidth, Lauren could not tell. She set the phone down. She was alone. The attack on the western perimeter was thunder now. Constant, rolling, the sound of a defensive line fully engaged. Mortars were impacting somewhere beyond her hearing. Machine guns were chattering. Men were shouting, fighting, dying. And on the eastern flank, in the quiet eye of the storm, an enemy platoon was advancing toward an undefended position. Lauren understood what was about to happen. The western attack would pin the defenders in place, forcing them to commit reserves, exposing their rear. The eastern force, approaching to the frozen stream bed, masked by the blizzard, ignored by command, would emerge behind the main trench line at the exact moment when every weapon and every eye was pointed the other way. It was textbook. It was brilliant. It would work, unless someone stopped it. Lauren looked at her rifle. She looked at her range card. She looked at the firing slit and the white void beyond. She had 45 rounds. She had 1 rifle. She had no support, no reinforcement, no fire mission to call. She had herself. The decision was not difficult. It was not even a decision. It was a natural conclusion of everything she had learned, everything she had practiced, everything she had become during 2 tours and 16 months of war. She was a sniper. This was her position. Those were enemies advancing toward her perimeter. She would do her job. Lauren settled into her shooting position. She pulled the M24 stock tight against her shoulder. She controlled her breathing. For seconds in, for seconds out, slowing her heart rate, steadying her hands. The scope's crosshairs found the white void and waited. The blizzard would not last forever. The visibility would fluctuate. The enemy would have to cross open ground. And when they did, she would be ready. At 0943, the eastern assault began. The blizzard parted for 6 seconds, an eternity in combat time, and Lauren saw them. Not 6 soldiers, not a squad, a full platoon. 20-plus dismounts advancing in 3 echelons, moving with a disciplined spacing of trained infantry. The lead element had already reached the 600-meter mark, using the boulder cluster as concealment. The second echelon was breaking from the tree line. The third was still emerging from the forest, weapons up, scanning for threats. Lauren's stomach dropped. This was not a probing attack. This was not a reconnaissance in force. This was a full-scale assault designed to shatter the eastern flank and envelop the defensive perimeter from behind. And she was the only thing standing in their way. The lead element began moving again, advancing through the snow in short rushes. Fire team bounds. Classic infantry tactics. They were covering ground quickly, efficiently, and they were heading directly for the gap between OP-7 and the main trench line. Lauren made her calculations. The point man was at 230 meters and closing. He was moving in a crouch, weapon up, eyes scanning the terrain ahead. Behind him, 3 soldiers maintained interval. They had not seen OP-7. They had not expected anyone to be watching. She had seconds to act. Lauren exhaled slowly and placed her crosshairs on the point man's center mass. 230 meters. Light wind. Minimal adjustment required. Her finger moved from the trigger guard to the trigger. The first shot of the battle belonged to her. She squeezed. The M24 kicked against her shoulder. The sound was sharp, clean, swallowed almost instantly by the howling wind. 230 meters downrange, the point man's legs buckled. He dropped into snow and did not move. For 1 perfect second, nothing happened. The enemy soldiers had not identified the shot's origin. The sound had been masked by the storm. The lead element had lost their point man, but they did not know where the fire had come from. Lauren cycled the bolt. Brass ejected. Fresh round chambered. She found the second target, a soldier who had frozen in place, staring at his fallen comrade, processing the impossible fact that someone was shooting at them from a position that was supposed to be empty. 200 meters. Center mass. She squeezed. The second soldier fell. Now the enemy understood. Now they knew someone was in OP-7. Now they would respond. The lead element scattered, diving for cover behind the boulder cluster. Muzzle flashes erupted from 6 positions as automatic weapons opened fire on her post. Rounds slammed into the timber walls, punched through sandbags, cracked past a firing slit in white-hot streaks. Lauren did not flinch. She had been shot at before. She knew the difference between suppressive fire, designed to keep her head down, and aimed fire designed to kill her. This was suppressive. They did not have her position fixed. They were shooting at where they thought she was. She used their confusion. While the boulder cluster element maintained fire, the second echelon continued advancing through the storm. They were pushing forward, using the covering fire as protection, trying to close the distance before she could engage them. Lauren shifted her scope. Second echelon. For soldiers advancing in a staggered line at 250 meters. She identified the one carrying the PKM, the machine gunner. If he got into position, his sustained fire would pin her down and allow the assault to continue. She put her crosshairs on his chest and squeezed. The machine gunner spun and collapsed. The PKM fell into the snow beside him, 3 down. But the assault was not stopping. The enemy was trained, disciplined, and committed. They had come too far to turn back because a single sniper was causing casualties. The third echelon emerged from the tree line in force. Lauren cycled the bolt and scanned for her next target. The enemy commander was somewhere in that formation. She could see it in the way the soldiers moved, not randomly, but with coordination. Someone was directing them. Someone was adjusting the assault based on her fire. If she could identify and eliminate the commander, the assault would lose cohesion. But she could not see him. The blizzard was intensifying again, visibility dropping to 30 meters, then 20, then 10. The enemy became shapes in the white nothing, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Lauren forced herself to breathe. She could not shoot what she could not see, but she could control the ground. She knew the terrain. She knew where they had to go. The frozen stream bed. Any force advancing on the perimeter would have to use that depression for cover. It was the only route that offered concealment from the elevated positions. If the enemy wanted to reach the main trench line, they would funnel through that stream bed. Lauren adjusted her scope to cover the outlet point, the position where the stream bed rose to meet the open slope at approximately 400 meters. Any soldier emerging from that concealed approach would have to cross her field of fire. She waited. The assault continued. She could hear more than see it. The crunch of boots on snow, the shouted commands in a language she did not understand, the periodic crack of small arms as elements exchanged fire with positions she could not identify. The The western battle still raged behind her, a constant thunder that meant the main defensive line was fully engaged. No reinforcement was coming. The QRF was committed. Command had no assets to spare. Lauren was fighting this battle alone. At 0951, the visibility improved for 4 seconds. She saw them, 10 soldiers emerging from the stream bed at the outlet point. They had used the depression exactly as she had predicted, advancing undercover until they reached the 400-meter mark. Now they were breaking into the open, spreading out for the final assault run. Lauren engaged. Her first shot dropped the lead soldier at 390 meters. Her second shot took the man behind him. Her third shot missed. The target had moved at the exact moment she squeezed, and the round cracked past his head by inches. The remaining soldiers went aground. They had identified her position now. They knew exactly where the fire was coming from. Return fire intensified. Rounds slammed into OP-7 from multiple directions. The timber walls were disintegrating under the sustained barrage. Sandbags burst, spraying sand and fabric across the interior. A round passed through the firing slit and impacted the back wall 3 inches from Lauren's head. She did not move. She cycled the bolt and found another target, 200 meters. Moving fast, trying to reach a covered position. She led the target by 6 inches and squeezed. The soldier stumbled and fell. 5 down, 6 down, but the assault was adapting. The enemy commander, still invisible somewhere in the formation, was adjusting tactics. Elements were spreading wider, using the blizzard for concealment, reducing her field of fire. Lauren checked her ammunition. 34 standard rounds remaining, 3 match-grade rounds still in her breast pocket. She was burning through her ammunition faster than she had planned. At this rate, she would be empty in less than 10 minutes. The assault would continue. The eastern flank would fall. She needed to change the equation. She needed to find the commander. Lauren shifted her scope, scanning the rear echelons. The commander would not be at the front. He would be directing from a position of relative safety, close enough to observe the assault, far enough to survive initial contact. She looked for signs. A soldier who was not advancing. A radio operator. A cluster of bodies that suggested a command element. The blizzard swirled. Visibility fluctuated. Her scope filled with white nothing, then cleared, then filled again. There, 420 meters. Near the abandoned stone foundation, she had marked on her range card, a figure standing while others crouched, a posture of authority, an arm gesturing toward the perimeter, directing the assault with precise movements that spoke of training and experience. The enemy commander. Lauren's breath caught. 420 meters was beyond her comfortable range with standard ammunition. The wind was gusting at 15 knots from the northwest. The target was partially concealed behind the stone foundation. Even under ideal conditions, this would be a difficult shot. Under these conditions, it was nearly impossible. She had 3 match-grade rounds. Each one was designed for exactly this moment, a precision engagement at the edge of her capability. But she had been saving them. She had been hoping for a closer shot, a clearer opportunity. That opportunity was not coming. The assault was reaching its climax. The enemy had committed their reserves. The lead elements were within 200 meters of the main trench line, and the defenders on the western perimeter were too engaged to respond. In the next 3 to 4 minutes, the eastern flank would collapse, the perimeter would be breached, and everyone behind her would be fighting for their lives. Lauren had one chance. She reached into her breast pocket and extracted the first match-grade round. The brass was warm from her body heat. Exactly as intended, she ejected the standard round in her chamber and seated the precision cartridge with care. Her hands were shaking, not from cold, from the weight of what she was about to attempt. 420 meters. Moving target. Blizzard conditions. Wind gusting. Partial concealment. If she missed, the assault would continue. The commander would give the order. The defensive line would fall. If she missed, she had 2 rounds left. Maybe enough for another attempt. Maybe not. Lauren steadied herself. She thought about Brennan's voice. The shot is the last thing you do. Everything before it is what makes it possible. She had done everything. She had memorized the terrain. She had calculated the ranges. She had observed the wind patterns. She had prepared her ammunition. She had studied the target. Now there was only the shot. She placed her crosshairs on the commander's chest. He was still directing the assault, still gesturing, still unaware that a single soldier in Forgotten Guard post had him in her sights. Lauren calculated the adjustment. 2 feet left for wind drift at this distance. 3 feet high for bullet drop. The match-grade round would fly flatter than standard ammunition, but at 420 meters, gravity still demanded its due. She exhaled half a breath and held. The crosshairs settled. 2 feet left, 3 feet high, holding on empty air above the commander's shoulder. The wind gusted. The scope trembled. The moment stretched. And then, for one heartbeat, the wind stopped. Lauren felt it before she saw it. The air pressure shifted. The snow stopped driving horizontally. The gusts that had been screaming from the northwest paused, as if the storm itself was holding its breath. She had 4 seconds. Maybe 5. Her finger moved. The trigger broke clean at 3.5 pounds. The M24 bucked against her shoulder. The round left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second, crossing 420 meters of frozen air in less than half a second. Lauren saw the impact. The commander's arm was still raised, still gesturing, still giving the order that would send his men flooding into the exposed flank. And then he was falling. His body crumpled sideways. His raised arm dropped. The order died in his throat. 420 meters. Moving target. Blizzard conditions. Hit. The effect was immediate. The enemy assault did not collapse instantly. Professional soldiers do not break at the first sign of adversity. But the coordination that had characterized the attack vanished. Squad elements that had been moving in disciplined bounds began to hesitate. Radio communications that had been crisp and authoritative dissolved into confusion. The machine gunner stopped firing to look for instructions that were no longer coming. Lauren used the disarray. She cycled the bolt and chambered another match-grade round. At 350 meters, a soldier had risen from cover to check on the fallen commander. She placed her crosshairs center mass and squeezed. The soldier dropped beside his commander. She cycled the bolt again. Last match-grade round. At 300 meters, an enemy radio man was shouting into his handset, trying to establish contact with higher headquarters, trying to report what had happened. She could not let that report go through. 300 meters. Stationary target. Better conditions. She exhaled, adjusted, squeezed. The radio man fell. 3 precision shots. 3 hits. The enemy's command structure had been decapitated in 45 seconds. Lauren ejected the spent brass and reloaded with standard ammunition. She had 31 rounds remaining, and the assault was not over. But the nature of the fight had changed. Without coordination, the enemy elements began acting independently. Some continued advancing, driven by momentum and training. Others withdrew toward the tree line, seeking cover from the invisible sniper who had killed their leaders. Several went aground and began firing blindly toward OP-7, trying to suppress a threat they could no longer locate. Lauren engaged them methodically. She prioritized by threat. Machine gunners first, anyone carrying a PKM or RPK who could establish suppressive fire. Then squad leaders, identified by their body language and positioning. Then riflemen advancing on the perimeter. Each shot was deliberate. Each target was selected for maximum effect. At 1003, the enemy assault began to fragment. The lead elements, already within 200 meters of the trench line, found themselves without support. The follow-on forces that should have reinforced them were scattered across the slope, leaderless and disorganized. The coordinated advance had become a collection of individual soldiers trying to survive. Lauren kept shooting. At 1007, she heard something behind her. Boots on snow, American voices, the sound of weapons being charged. Third squad had arrived. They came in a rush, 8 soldiers moving in fire team bounds, weapons up, scanning for threats. Their squad leader, a staff sergeant named Ortega, threw himself down beside OP-7 and shouted over the wind. "Mackenzie, what's your status?" Lauren did not take her eye from the scope. Engaged enemy platoon, eastern approach. Approximately 15 to 20 dismounts. scattered across the slope. Commander and key leadership eliminated. They're broken but still in the fight. Ortega stared at her. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to something that might have been respect. You did this alone? Someone had to. Second squad arrived 90 seconds later, reinforcing the eastern flank with additional firepower. The remaining enemy soldiers, caught between the entrenched offenders and the fresh reinforcements, began withdrawing toward the tree line. Lauren continued engaging targets until the last one disappeared into the forest. The counterattack was over by 10:30. The eastern flank held. The enemy's flanking maneuver, designed to collapse the entire defensive perimeter, had been stopped by a single sniper in a position that nobody had believed mattered. Lauren sat back from her scope for the first time in over an hour. Her hands were shaking. Her shoulders ached from the M24's recoil. Her ears were ringing from the sustained fire that had hammered OP-7's walls. She looked at her ammunition count. 18 rounds remaining, 27 expended, 8 confirmed kills, based on what she had seen through her scope. The actual number might be higher. Several of her shots had connected with targets she could not fully observe through the blizzard. Staff Sergeant Ortega climbed into OP-7 and crouched beside her. His face was wind-burned, and his eyes held a particular exhaustion of a man who had just survived something he did not fully understand. "Mackenzie," he said, "Command is asking for a full debrief. Captain Reeves is coming up personally." Lauren nodded slowly. She did not have the energy for more than that. "The Western attack," she asked. "Repulsed. They hit us hard, but we held. Everyone's treating it as the main event." Ortega paused. "They don't know yet what happened over here. They will." Captain Reeves arrived at OP-7 37 minutes later, accompanied by the battalion S2 intelligence officer and a small security element. The captain was a career officer with 22 years of service and a reputation for demanding excellence. He did not tolerate excuses, and he did not offer praise lightly. He looked at the shattered timber walls of OP-7. He looked at the sandbags that had been torn apart by enemy fire. He looked at the brass casing scattered across the floor. Then he looked at Lauren. "Corporal Mackenzie, I'm told you engaged a platoon-sized enemy element alone for approximately 18 minutes before reinforcement arrived. Is that accurate?" "Yes, sir. I'm told you eliminated the enemy commander at a range of 420 meters in blizzard conditions with a single shot. Is that accurate?" "Yes, sir. I'm told you submitted 3 contact reports to command prior to the attack, all of which were logged and filed without action. Is that accurate?" Lauren hesitated. This was the question that could destroy careers. Not hers, but those of the officers who had dismissed her warnings. She could lie. She could minimize. She could protect the system that had failed her. She did not. "Yes, sir. I reported anomalies at 0630, 0715, and 0843. I was informed that eastern flank assessments were unchanged and that assets were committed to the western perimeter." Captain Reeves' face did not change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Lauren recognized it. She had seen it before, in the moments when senior leaders realized that institutional assumptions had nearly cost lives. "I see." The captain walked to the firing slit and looked out at the slope. The blizzard was clearing now, and the bodies of the enemy soldiers were visible against the white snow, dark shapes marking the path of the assault that had almost succeeded. "S2, Reeves said without turning around. "I want a full review of the intelligence assessments for the eastern approach. I want to know why wildlife displacement indicators and anomalous sounds were not elevated to priority status. I want a written report on my desk by 1800. The S2 officer's face went pale. "Yes, sir." Reeves turned back to Lauren. "Corporal Mackenzie, what you did today saved this position. Your actions under fire, without support, against overwhelming odds, represent the highest standards of professional arms." He paused. "I'm recommending you for the Bronze Star with V device for valor. Additionally, I'm authorizing your immediate transfer to Scout Platoon, where your skills will be properly utilized." Lauren looked at the captain. She looked at the ruined walls of OP-7. She looked at the slope beyond, where the enemy had come so close to succeeding. Scout Platoon was everything she had wanted, everything she had been denied. the position she had earned a dozen times over but never been offered. And yet, "Sir," she said slowly, "I appreciate the recommendation, but I'd like to request permission to remain at OP 7. Captain Reeves stared at her. "You want to stay here? After what just happened?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" Lauren considered the question. There were many answers she could give. She could talk about unfinished business. She could talk about proving a point. She could talk about the satisfaction of being vindicated after years of being ignored. But those were not the real reasons. "Because someone needs to watch the eastern approach, sir, and I know this terrain better than anyone now." She gestured toward her range card, still pinned to the wall despite the bullet holes surrounding it. "I've memorized every reference point. I know where they came from. I know how they moved. Next time, if there's a next time, I'll see them before they reach the tree line." Captain Reeves studied her for a long moment. "You understand that by staying here, you're turning down a promotion, better duty assignment, and better living conditions." "Yes, sir." "You understand that the scout platoon is where careers are made, where recognition happens, where your skills will be visible to people who matter." "Yes, sir." The captain shook his head slowly. "Then you're either the most stubborn soldier I've ever met or the most dedicated. I'm not sure which." "Maybe both, sir." A ghost of a smile crossed Reeves' face. "OP-7 is being redesignated as a priority reinforced observation post. Effective immediately. 2-person crew. Direct communication link to the mortar section. Enhanced supply allocation and fire support priority. You'll be the senior observer." Lauren nodded. "Thank you, sir." The captain turned to leave, then paused. "Mackenzie, your reports this morning. The ones that got filed and forgotten. Sir, that won't happen again. I'm implementing new protocols for observation post communications. Direct escalation to the operations officer. No filtering by junior duty staff." He looked at her steadily. "You were right. We almost paid for being wrong with everyone's lives." Lauren did not say anything. There was nothing to say. The acknowledgement she had waited years to receive had finally come, and it meant less than she had expected. Not because it was unimportant, but because she had never needed it. She had always known what she was capable of. The institution had finally caught up. Captain Reeves departed with his entourage. 3rd Squad returned to the main perimeter. 2nd Squad established a security position on the eastern flank, while engineers began reinforcing OP-7's damaged walls. Lauren stayed at her post. The blizzard was fading now. Visibility was improving minute by minute. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in 36 hours, casting pale winter light across the snow-covered slope. Lauren could see the terrain clearly now. The boulder cluster at 600 meters. The lightning-struck tree at 900 meters. The abandoned stone foundation at 1,100 meters, where the enemy commander had fallen. The bodies were still out there. Someone would collect them eventually, but for now, they remained as silent testimony to what happened on the eastern flank. The assault that nobody had expected, the warning that nobody had heeded, and the single soldier who had held the line when everything should have failed. Lauren picked up her range card and began updating it. New reference points, new calculations, new data gathered from the engagement. She marked the exact positions where the enemy had emerged from the tree line. She noted the path they had taken through the stream bed. She estimated the time intervals between their movements. If they came again, she would be ready. The wind picked up slightly, and fresh snow began to fall. Light flurries at first, then heavier. The world outside the firing slip began to blur and fade, returning to the white void that had concealed the enemy's approach. Lauren settled into her shooting position and raised her scope. The horizon dissolved. The trees disappeared. The boulder cluster and the lightning-struck tree and the stone foundation all vanished into the swirling white. But she knew they were there. She knew every meter of that terrain. She knew where the threats would come from and how they would move. And she would be watching, patient, prepared, invisible, the sniper at guard post 7, the one who had always been ready, the one they had finally learned not to ignore. If this story kept you engaged, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if command ignored your warnings and you were the only one who could see the threat coming? Subscribe if you haven't already. More stories like this are coming. See you in the next one.